What's the accidentally hottest thing done by someone who wasn't intending to turn you on? I was at a neighborhood concert one time and this girl was making her way up to the front while the masses of people were pushing and kicking each other. This very cute girl stopped to talk to me to see what's up, and at that moment, everyone decided to sandwich together. So my body was pressed against her tightly. She was directly in front of me, facing me, and she was pretty humorous too, because while we were literally face to face she said nice weather we're having. Never saw her again, but I still think about her. When dudes take off a sweater and their shirt rides up a little with it. Degree. My wife doesn't understand how much I like when she runs her hands through my hair. There was a guy the first knew liked me, but had no experience with women and was as much terrified of me as he was interested. I hugged him, and he was so ungodly, obviously nervous. His hands were shaking and I could practically feel his panicked heartbeat. And the vagina says, yes. This is good to me. I was on spring break a few years ago staying in this hostel with groups of travelers from all over the world, and one night as a group of us was sitting on the patio drinking and chatting about stuff, this hot dude from I think Australia, maybe, laughed at something his friend said and I realized he had the deepest, chocolatiest voice I had ever heard. Bam. Right to the clit. A girl at work told me to kneel down and tie her shoe. I'm 6'4" and she's 5'7". I couldn't stand up immediately afterwards. Good boy. I was holding my girlfriend's 1-year-old niece last week when the little girl rubbed her eyes and snuggled into my chest. I heard my girlfriend, barely audible, say "oh my god," under her breath. We f***ed so hard that night. I'm just gonna assume you mean your girlfriend. I have a coworker whom I usually spend breaks with smoking. We were outside last week and she was ranting about some stupid shit that went down over in her side of the office. We work in different departments. Anyhow, she ended up getting pretty upset, and while a sexual thought has never crossed my mind involving her before, there was something about the way she was yelling and the look on her face that for some reason made me want to take her right then and there. Can't explain it and haven't had a similar thought since. I couldn't even look at her, I just stammered "I have to go," and went back inside. Unrelated but honorable mention. I used to be a nude model for art classes back when I was in school. One time a girl drew my dick really nice. That was cool. Waitress spilled water on my lap and dabbed my shorts with a towel for a good 30 seconds. She got a good tip that night. That's strange. The stain appears to be getting bigger. Kinda the reverse for me. In a couple of my classes I would braid the hair of whichever girl was sitting in front of me. I made sure to ask that they were cool with it first. Turns out, after the first couple times of me doing this, that there was a little group that always talked about getting their hair braided, and they would have little arguments to find out who got to sit in front of me. Kinda cool, I guess. I mean, I just like braiding hair. I wake up to my girlfriend trying to fit her very nice ass into her jeans almost every day. My coworker laid his head on my lap on a long car trip home from the beach. Every minute or so he'd ever so slightly just twitch his fingers in a tiny caress of my knee. Oh my god. I'd say he knew what he was doing. If only he knew not to text his not-so-ex-girlfriend at the exact same time, making it abundantly clear they were still kind of together. It was literally the epitome of our flirtation before I pulled the e-brake and aborted mission. I was being a bit bossy to one of my female friends. When I asked her to go get dressed to go outside, she answered yes, Daddy, in a voice meant to point out my pushiness. It had a different effect. When girls hear a compliment and are giddy yet confident at the same time. Usually a quick shrug, a giggle and a smile. Oh stop it, you. When I was an undergraduate student, I sang in the school's vocal ensembles. One was a chamber choir, the other a show choir. I had an outlandish, shameless crush on one of the guys. He was also a pianist and composer, and a little older than me. We hung out a lot, but I was plump and he liked very thin girls. So he wasn't interested in I genuinely liked him as a person, so I settled for being friends and tried to quash my crush. One day, he invited himself over to my house after school. We had an upright piano in our living room at the time, and as soon as he walked in, he made a beeline for it. I stood beside him and watched him play for about 20 minutes. I was mostly looking at his hands but was somehow also keenly aware of his stubbly jawline at the same time. I was completely enraptured. I was wearing jeans and a V-neck t-shirt, being quite busty. It was a slightly immodest look, but it was one that everyone who knew me had seen many times. After about 20 minutes of this musical Adonis serenading me, my mother walked out of her bedroom. I was standing with my hand on the banister, completely light-headed with arousal. My mother's eyes dropped straight to my bare chest, which was flushed and heaving. She promptly burst into laughter, suggested that he play more quietly and went back into her room. Anyone who whispers in my ear, that gets me. 9 years ago, my friend and I were walking through a park in a snowstorm one night. We began throwing snowballs, and getting really into it, when he threw me into a snow bank. That's probably when I began to actually notice him. We wrestled together all winter, and I still didn't really think about him sexually. Finally, in February, I was at his house and the snow was 3 feet deep, and coming down in a blizzard, so I was just going to sleep on the couch for the umpteenth time, when we began wrestling again. One thing led to another, and I didn't sleep on the couch. We've been married for 6 years now. Being forceful is a huge turn on for me. My wife knew she was wearing a blazer the next day for a meeting, but couldn't decide what skirt. So she was going back and forth to the closet for different skirts to see in the mirror, but the whole time only wearing the blazer and panties. Sexiest combination ever. My girlfriend was in Europe singing with her choir last year, and she texted me a picture of her wearing just panties and her choir blazer. I literally walked into a post when I opened it on my phone. I'm a sucker for accents. Had a British girl come into my work for a few days in a row and every time she spoke I melted. I swear, if she had told me to go with her on a killing spree, I'd have gone. My dad has spent so much time in the UK on business he has a sixth sense for the accents. Not only can he tell what country you're from but what specific region you're from as well. He met this guy at a party with a UK accent he couldn't place. He finally went up and asked him where he was from. The guy leaned in and said, I'm from Richmond, Virginia. This is a speech impediment. He was not at all shy about pretending he was from the UK because girls loved it so much. In high school I had female friend that was home-schooled and worked at a donut shop. My parents both worked the night shift so I basically had the house to myself after school. She would come over smelling like donuts every day. Halloween party. Coworker went as slave Leia. At one point her boyfriend couldn't hear what she was saying so he gently tugged on her chain to reel her in closer. Needless to say, it moved a little. I cut my finger on a beer bottle at a party. This girl casually walks by, stops and sucks the end of my finger, without saying anything, walks away. That happened 25 years ago and I still think about her all the time. And you just let her walk away. You didn't go after her saying, oh man, I also cut my penis. You know when a guy stretches his arms up and his shirt pulls up and reveals his stomach? When that happens. Final year of uni. Doing a group project presentation. One of our group members was this really cool, pretty Swedish exchange student. We were sitting on the sidelines as one of our other group members was presenting. She leans over and starts whispering Swedish things in my ear. Holy shit. I turned to look at her and she blushes and giggled and apologized saying she got the wrong language. We had a lot of Swedish students in the course so they spoke it often among themselves. She then repeats herself in English. But I wasn't listening because I was too focused on the fact that I was about to stand up in front of a panel of industry professionals with a semi. A friend of mine was too warm so he unbuttoned one button from his shirt and I could see his chest hair and it was unacceptably hot. One time a friend of mine and I were hanging out in a park practicing LARP fighting, and he hit me so hard that he broke the weapon he was holding, inch-thick PVC pipe, through several layers of foam, shattered into 3 distinct pieces. The sound of the core snapping echoed off the trees. It was so loud, and I couldn't stop giggling for like 10 minutes. In retrospect I sort of suspect it was a moment like this for him, but I was distracted by the adrenaline rush. But worry not. This is not the end of the story. 3 years later or thereabouts, I got in his car to go somewhere. We had kind of drifted apart. didn't live close enough together to hang out often, but had happened to find the time one day to try to catch up. A little while of driving later, I noticed a little almost ring of PVC pipe attached to the driver's side sunshade by the sharp broken bits. I squinted at it, somewhat puzzled. Is that from that sword you broke on me? Yep, he said. Like this was a totally normal thing to have kept for 3 years. Ah, why? I wondered. He looked a little tortured for a split second, like he couldn't decide what to say. Then, in this very quiet, sad voice, he said, "It reminds me of you." Something about the tone of voice just hit me really hard. Like, oh, holy shit. You've been pining and I've been paying no attention at all. This is terrible. I can't even kiss you because you're driving. We're engaged now. My friend's sister jokingly told me if you don't stop being naughty I'm going to have to whip you. I didn't know someone I wasn't infatuated with could make me blush for a fetish I don't even like.